So welcome to the third episode of the Data Enrichment Pod. And today we're going to do a little bit deep dive into the publisher side of marketing data. I have quite an extensive experience of this firsthand. I worked at one of Sweden's biggest media houses and a development company that was responsible to serve over 100 news websites with new digital solutions, new digital products, and one of those projects was data enrichment and sharing data across different publisher domains. And this, I think, was one of the best initiatives that Swedish publishers ever done, because it's a huge challenge to kind of solve on your own, and instead they banded together to help solve it. And this is something that I've built on with my company, and this is also kind of where our whole business stems from. And we are still serving Swedish publishers, and we can also support global publishers with this type of service. As the programmatic ecosystem has evolved, this means also that the scalability of digital marketing solutions is huge. And this is also something that I'm really passionate about, that trying to solve a problem that is so great that it's actually fragmenting the whole marketing ecosystem, where publishers everywhere are struggling to keep their data relevant and keep their inventory relevant. And everyone sees that kind of the big competition for publishing houses, national or actually global, is the marketing channels, Google, Facebook, Apple, and so on. And I think that the relationship of publishers with data has been a little bit love-hate relationship. They've seen a need to approach it, and they've done it with projects such as the Brain project that I headed up. But it's also a lot of worries, fears around the data. Will someone else use it? Or how can we control it? We have the GDPR, there's a potential fine here, and so on. And kind of, I'll make a brief recap kind of where I'm coming from, because this is really, I think, a part of the history of marketing data, at least in Sweden. And when the Brain project first was initiated, there was really a consensus amongst a lot of different Swedish publishers that, we need to approach data somehow. And this was at a time where kind of DMPs sailed up as kind of the hottest platform in marketing, where you could leverage your users' online traffic into relevant segments for advertisers. And in the Brain project, the first we did was actually to try to find some DMP to use, and we landed on the Crux DMP that later became the Salesforce DMP. And we used it to kind of leverage online behavior, but this was kind of limited to the categories: sports, entertainment, finance, and so on, right? And saying something like, if you read 5 articles in this topic, then you're interested in this. And we also saw in this Brain project, or our then CEO Hanna saw that this is not enough. It's quite shallow behavior in terms of comparing to other players like Google and Facebook. We need to kind of add something more. So in the Brain project, we actually started adding data based on login, on verified information, because the thesis was that if we have kind of the highest accuracy, then the data will become more relevant. And building on this, we created a service that actually matched online users to public registers and anonymized them and made them into audiences or cohorts. And this, I have to tell you, this was in 2015 or something like this. So this was very early on, and within my company, we also started one of the Sweden's first programmatic ad networks, and that was then AdBid. It became a company called Adapt, and was later integrated in the Mediakompaniet digital network. So kind of this company has always been very early on new trends and so on. So what we did was we got a DMP. We actually created a CDP that could work with logged in data that we were enriching with more data. And then we also took those methods and started applying it on the DMP side, enriching with socioeconomics, together with behavior, contextual analysis, and so on and so on. But at some point, kind of those friends, those publishers that were hanging out and investing in this project, started kind of going in their separate directions. They started their own data projects, and kind of the cooperation fell apart. And in the end, it was the main owner, Stampen. They are still using the Brain platform and having all these types of enrichments and so on. But what I've seen was that when those other publishers decided to go in their own directions, kind of being a local publisher, building a huge data project on your own is not quite financially viable. And you actually have too low reach and scale to create enough reach in your audiences on your own to have a truly relevant audience data offer. And this, I think, has been, because while Brain's been around, I've seen, I think, 3 or 4 different data projects within publishers starting and then getting cancelled because there's no return on investment on them. And the challenge for me running the company and offering a data enrichment service was that during this period, third-party cookies were abundant. They were everywhere. And they actually, there was no chance that any publisher could build the same kind of data information, audience information, as you could with a third-party cookie. And this meant that kind of the demand for first-party data on the publisher side was quite low. It was not really there at all. They said, yeah, the buyers have all the data they need. Why, we can't see why we should need to add the data. On the other hand, now that third-party cookies are going away, the relevance of the first-party data is, of course, super high. And so this has kind of been the relationship, is that there's been no real need for first-party data, building your own data stack. And then now that it's really shifting, the knowledge is not super high, and the technology shifts really, really fast, meaning that it's hard to keep up with any kind of local data project. And that's where I see, of course, that our offering is very relevant, and we're serving a lot of publishers to reach this kind of quality and reach in the audiences with a first-party data solution. Because, the third-party cookie, like I said, has been mainly used for the buy side to collect data. We had media agencies building huge cookie pools across all their customer websites and so on, siphoning in data that they could leverage into a unique offer to kind of strengthen their position and so on, in the similar way that Facebook or any other player has done. So kind of, is there any impact on the publishers if the third-party cookie is going away, since they haven't really invested anything in those data stacks? And I would say yes, because I've been out there talking to publishers, and what they are realizing is that without third-party cookies, without access to good quality data on the buy side, there's actually a risk that the relevance of the publisher ad inventory is reduced, and a risk that more and more money will end up in those silos that are Google, Facebook, and TikTok and whatever, that they will still have a valid data offer, but the relevance for display and programmatic video and so on might be reduced. This is a worry that I hear when I'm out there talking to customers. And I think that this is also an opportunity for publishers to actually strengthen their position, get closer connection with the advertisers by having the data that the advertisers need. They can say, yeah, this is consented data, we're allowed to use it. It's no shady stuff going on here. It's built on our own content, it's based on our own logged in users, and it's data that we can match to your own customers. So here, if managed correctly, I think that we have an opportunity for publishers to actually strengthen their position on the market and within the data field. But having that said, I don't think that every publisher needs to invent their own audience targeting offer. Because what I hear on the other hand with advertisers is that what they want is actually a standard, so they can buy the same first party audiences across websites. Meaning that if you're after a standard, you should try to acquire this standard as cost efficient as possible, and maybe not necessarily build a huge data team where the data is actually more of a cost than a revenue. And I think that as I would say with anything, not only data and not only marketing data, how should you approach this as a publisher? And I think that the way I approach anything is that I start small, I learn, and then I adjust my requirements and demands, and I kind of invest a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then eventually I will have reached a maturity that I can say, all right, you know what, let's do a revamp. Now we know exactly what we need, so let's restructure this, right? But I think anyone who wants to have data as a part of their offering as a publisher needs to do something. Start small, acquire some kind of service that starts at least collecting information, so that you can learn what audiences do you have that are relevant to your advertisers. And here it's about matching advertisers to your audience, right? And usually there's already a match there, and if you can also prove it with data, your relevance with your advertisers will just increase. And you should also consider a data solution that is not just for your own sales, because there's a huge demand, a growing demand for programmatic data. And here the differentiator will be that publishers will have the longer history of the users, more data per user, verified data. The quality of the first party data will be much, much higher than what's available on the third party buy side, as the connection with third party cookies is gone. So I think that any publisher who's interested in starting building your own first party data offer is start small and expand on it, and use ready to go solutions that are cost efficient, that will not break the bank, and go from there. And I think that what we've seen with our customers is that data is actually becoming a new revenue stream, besides the added value in the direct sales, because exposing the first party data programmatically, because this also means that you're linking the impression to the data points, meaning that if you expose the information, the audiences, programmatically, they are still linked to the impressions on your own websites, meaning that you're upselling with a CPM value on the data and getting the impression as well. So kind of making sure that you have a wide distribution of the data as possible, I think is that you're not thinking just we want to sell those audiences through our direct sales. If you want to leverage it properly, it needs to connect on the programmatic level as well. In the future, like seeing what, based on my experience and what I see going forward, I think that there is a need for some kind of standard. I'm pushing for it myself. We're already created a standard that any publisher can plug in, and this standard is also available on the buy side, meaning that we can start matching buyers and sellers, right? And instead of trying to invent something new, we can actually step it back, even all the way to the CRM on both advertiser and publisher side, meaning that we're actually connecting the data to the most valuable assets, the customers. And of course, here it opens up for huge opportunities in terms of what you can build on top of this first-party data that you create. And thinking about, anonymous data, logged-in data, and kind of the developments done on the AI side, I think here is also an opportunity for anyone working with first-party data and verified information, that kind of AI is only as good as the data you train it on. And if you have kind of the verified information, the true answer about the customers that are 100% sure, then you have also a base for when you're connecting AI and such in the future. I'll speak more about the AI side of this in coming episodes, but I really think that taking a grasp around your first-party data, whether you're a publisher or an advertiser, is essential with all the changes happening on the marketing ecosystem right now. And yeah, going forward, I think that someone who works a lot in product development, I'm a little bit excited about this, because this is kind of, we're at the new frontiers, we're breaking ground, and we are actually seeing a new field emerging on the programmatic ecosystem, and this is the data enrichment part. So I think that having started this pod, I think it's really good timing and super relevant for marketers and advertisers and publishers everywhere. So stay tuned, and looking forward to talking to you again.